Welcome back to the Dreadful Dialogue. My name is Alyse, and today I have a returning guest again. The lovely Kristen is back with me. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Alyse. Thanks for having me back.
We have a really fun episode today. We're going to be changing it up a little. I'm going to be doing the movie Scream from 1996, and we're going to do it recap style. We're both huge fans of this movie, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's one of my favorites, for sure.
Yeah, when you said you wanted to do it, I was like trying to come up with the notes and information for it. And I was like, I can't, there's so much to it. And that's why I was like, I think we need to do this more recap than just like bouncing around, which is what I tend to do with most movies. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go scene by scene, just a little heads up. Some of the scenes are pretty graphic. Some of them are pretty violent. So we will be going into some of that detail. I'm not sure why people would be listening to a horror podcast if you're not ready for that, but this will be going on YouTube and different things. So I want to just give that little preface that, there's going to be some pretty in-depth stuff when it comes to killing, because there's a lot of killing in this movie.
Yeah, just a little bit. It's fine.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
It's fine.
So, Kristen, why do you like Scream so much?
Well, I really think it's because of the 90s. Mm-hmm. I remember watching it the first time. So it came out in 1996. I was probably like 13, 14 years old when it came out. I remember watching it with my mom.
What a cool mom.
I know. Yeah, my mom and I are only 20 years apart. So we bonded over a lot of like similar interests and things like that. I love Matthew Lillard. Love. This was also like prime Friends time, right? So Courtney Cox was a big deal. Mm-hmm. I watched Neve Campbell in Party of Five. So you know what I mean? It was like all these familiar callbacks. Drew Barrymore. Like, how could you not? Right? Yeah. So that's why I really wanted to watch it. I also had a huge crush on Skeet Ulrich.
Oh my God, me too. I still kind of do. I've seen him. Like, I didn't go and get like a
guy.
Yeah, he's still. Oh, he aged like fine wine, girl.
He sure did. And funny enough, Matthew Lillard, he does all these horror cons now. Mm-hmm. And my sister's best friend met him recently, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so jealous. But anyway. Going back, so that was why I was really into it, because of the star-studded cast. Mm-hmm. Plus, I already started loving horror when I was a teenager. And then the whole story just was so thrilling. And it made you think. And it made you second-guess yourself. Because you think you know it, then you don't know it. Then you think you know it. And I love movies like that, where it makes you think.
Yeah, lots of twists and turns.
Absolutely.
Like, it's a bit of everything. It's horror, it's comedy, it's a whodunit, it's a thriller. It's got jump scares. They're not like crazy jump scares, but there are. I didn't realize how many jump scares there were till I rewatched it. But yeah, you brought up so many important points. Like, I've seen Skeet Ulrich, I've seen Matthew Lillard at different horror conventions that I've got to. I haven't gone to like taken my picture with them. You have to pay to do all that, and I'm like pretty selective. I'm like, oh my gosh, like not that I'm complaining. You have to pay for it. Rightfully, they're paying to be there and whatnot. But yeah, I walk by and I see them, and yeah, Skeet Ulrich still looks the same, girl. He looks good. Matthew Lillard is hilarious. I just love his little mannerisms. I loved him like when he was in Hackers. Yeah. So there's so many good actors in it. I love Rose McGowan. I think she's so beautiful.
She's
I love
gorgeous.
her in every hair color.
Oh, yeah. She's fabulous. She's an absolute beauty. Going back to Matthew Lillard real quick. I know he's my fave, and I'm going to talk about him a lot.
Go for it.
But in this movie, his comedic stuff, like, you have to really pay attention. But he is so I don't know why I think it's funny, but he is funny in this movie.
He is. He's the funniest one in this whole movie.
Oh, yeah. He's very entertaining. And I also have a fondness for David Arquette.
Yeah, and it's really cool, right? That like that's how they met on the set. I mean, I know Courtney Cox and David Arquette didn't work as a couple, but to know that they got together because of this franchise. And from what I understand, they're pretty amicable with each other. Like they didn't have like this ugly breakup. Like they're very mature about it.
Right. And they had a daughter. And how could we forget Henry Winkler? I watched Happy Days as a kid.
I was going to just ask if you watched it. Hey.
Yeah, of course I did. Arthur Fonzarelli. How could I not?
Yeah. I love it.
Good times.
Yeah, so many great actors. It was really funny. I read somewhere that Courtney Cox, like, they weren't going to give her the role because of Friends. They were like, I don't know if you could play this, like, bitchy lady. And, like, they didn't have confidence in her initially. But it worked. She ended up getting the role. And I think it was good for her because it kind of, she got to play something different. And you love to hate her. Like, she drives me crazy at times. I don't root for her as much as you root for Sid and other people. But, right. She's kind of fun to have around. You kind of need her. You need a character like that in this movie.
Yeah, she comes off very firm and annoying, but then she has likable moments.
Yeah. So I don't remember the first time I watched it. Like, I've been racking my brain. I remember the first time watching Scream 2. I don't know if I watched it in the movie theater. Like, my brother Adam is a huge fan of this movie. I'm like, I don't know. I know me and him saw part 2 together in the movie theater. Because he's working at a movie theater, so we got to go for free. It was like a whole thing. I'll have to save that story for another episode.
Oh.
Or if I saw it with my cousin Casey, because we watched, she was like, me and her, like, right from the get-go, that was like how I got into horror. Because we both got into it together. And I don't know, like, I don't remember I'm pretty sure I saw it at the movie theater, but I just know, like, from the get, I do remember how I felt watching it, though. So I'm sure that'll come up throughout the recap, like remembering certain scenes and like how they affected me. But it's so funny. Yeah, we were talking before we started recording about how, like, this movie has such a meta aspect to it. Yeah, I'll do my best to point some of those out. I know you're going to point some of the different things out, like the different callbacks to other horror movies and lines and things. Yeah. I don't think we're going to catch them all, but it's really cool to, like, rewatch it kind of more analytically to catch those. But I didn't catch that on the first watch. I caught a few. Over time you catch more and more as you watch it. So. Right.
I definitely didn't catch on to any of this as a 13, 14-year-old kid.
Yeah, and I was about the same age as you. I think I was a freshman. I think I was a freshman in high school when this came out. So, I mean, I wasn't watching it to catch Easter eggs and things like that. I was just like, oh, cool, another scary movie. And I think it was and it was so good because we were in that era of, like, franchise hell where, like, bad movies were coming out. Horror was, like, not a cool thing at the time unless you were already a horror fan. So a lot of people who were not into movies like this really got into horror because of this, or they might not be a horror fan, but they love this movie. And I mean, it spawned a whole franchise and a whole franchise of spoof movies as well. So
I know. Cool. And you're right about that, because during this time there were a bunch of those teenage movies where it's like, does the dorky girl get the guy? I can't even remember all of them. And, like, there's American Pie and stuff like that.
Yeah, not another movie. It was another spoof. Yeah.
So all of this franchise was very eye-opening for the horror genre in the 90s.
Yeah.
I felt like it brought it back to life.
It did. It so did. You're right. It captured a time of, like, just like the 80s had their heyday with teenage movies. There was a heyday in the 90s of teenage movies, but this was one that's like, oh no, we're going to also resurrect, like, the horror genre. And because there weren't as many in the 90s that were good. Not to say there were none, but this really brought it to the forefront.
Yeah. I think it paved the way for I Know What You Did Last Summer and Final Destination.
Yeah. It definitely did. Yeah, for tons of we could list a bunch of movies that it
I know. I could go on for hours about that, but we're not here for that, though, are we?
Nah. So let's get into this. So again, 1996, Scream. We're gonna go pretty much scene by scene, guys. So here we are.
Yeah.
So the film opens with some screams and phone ringing, and this is before we even see anything, and we get the title card and it says Scream, and I don't know the name of that font. I meant to look it up, but it's like very 90s looking.
Yeah.
And we meet our main character, or as we were duped and didn't know, we thought she was the main character, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Played by Drew Barrymore, and she's answering a ringing phone to a voice of a man, and she's like, who is this? And he says, who is this? Right when she answers the phone, and she's like, who are you trying to reach? And he says, what number is this? And she asks, well, what number are you trying to reach? And, tells him you got the wrong number and hangs up. which if you're if you're a younger viewer, I mean, we're ladies of a certain age. This is during the time of like cell phones are a new thing, and they keep saying cellular phone. I crack up because now we just say a cell phone, and they're like the cellular phone. I can't even say that word properly. Cellular phone. So I don't know how good of like, I don't know when like, what was that, like star 69 callback, and I don't know when caller ID might have started being where you could say blocked caller ID. I don't know, but yeah. It wouldn't make sense to somebody who didn't grow up in an era with house phones. Like, yeah, definitely. You would just hang on your cell phone now. You hit hang up. Like, no, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I barely answer it as it is.
Yeah. So she hangs up on this caller, and he's got a very distinct voice. I'm just going to call him the caller's voice, or the man. So this man calls again, and he says, oh, I think I dialed the wrong number. And she says, well, why did you dial it again? He apologizes, and she says, you're forgiven. Bye now. And he pleads, wait, I want to talk to you for a second. And she cleverly says, there's 900 numbers for that. See ya. And she hangs up again. You remember 900 numbers, the commercial for those late at night?
For like Miss Cleo.
Oh my God, Miss Cleo. It's so, I know, side story. I used to say that to my students, like when they'd be like asking me about, oh, how did I do on this? How did I do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I can't see the future. Call Miss Cleo. And they're like, what, Miss? Or like I'll made a mistake, and I'm like, I'm sorry guys, I'm not Marty McFly. I can't go back into my DeLorean, and some of them get that one, and then some of them just stare at me like, what is this?
They're like, what
talking about?
I love it. That's amazing.
Yeah. So she's telling him call 900 number, and hangs up. We get a view of the backyard of her house, and she puts some Jiffy Pop on her stove. And then the phone rings, and she answers it. Who is this? And again, it's the same male voice. And he says, tell me your name. And I'll tell you mine. And Casey responds, no, I don't think so. And the caller asks her what she's doing. And she explains she's making popcorn, and she's getting ready to watch a video. The male caller wants to know which one. And she says, some scary movie. And this is where we get the iconic line, you like scary movies? What's your favorite scary movie?
Ooh.
Yeah. And she tells me, Halloween, the one with the with the guy with the white mask, he walks around and stalks babysitters.
Right.
And she asks the caller, hey, what's your favorite scary movie? And he's all, Nightmare on Elm Street. Eventually they come to the conclusion that it's Nightmare on Elm Street. And I love, again, this is where we start to get meta. They talk about how the first one was really good and they don't get so good after, which is funny because this is directed by Wes Craven. And spoiler alert, if you don't know, if you've been under a rock, Wes Craven is the director of Nightmare on Elm Street, which is funny because throwback to an episode me and Paul did about Nightmare on Elm Street. And I couldn't remember the director. We did this whole thing where we tried to remember everything we could about the movie, and then we actually watched it and realized all the mistakes we made because we hadn't seen it in so long, yet we were supposed to be big fans. And I think I said John Carpenter, but another great, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So the caller starts to get flirty with her and asks her if she has a boyfriend, and she's like, why? Do you want to ask me out on a date? And she says, maybe. And he says, maybe, do you have a boyfriend? She tells him no. And he's like, hey, you never told me your name. And she's like, why do you want to know my name? And this is where it gets scary because he says, because I want to know who I'm looking at.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
Big yikes.
Yeah, that big yikes. I love how on your podcast, that's one of your guys' favorite lines. Yeah. So she's spooked at this point. We hear a dog barking. She's looking out of her window. She's making sure her patio door is locked. And she says, look, I gotta go. And the caller says, I thought we were going to go out. And she's like, nah, I don't think so. And in a more sinister tone, he says, don't hang up on me. Yeah. She hangs up, and he calls again right away saying, don't hang up on me. She asks what he wants, and he says, talk to me. She tells him to dial someone else and hangs up again. Mm-hmm. At this point, the Jiffy Pop is starting to burn. She answers the phone again and says, listen, asshole. And he yells, no, you listen, you little bitch. If you hang up on me again, I'm going to cut you like a fish.
That creeped me out the first time I heard that.
Yeah, like at first you're scared when he's like, I want to see who I'm looking at. And you're like, no, is this for real? Like, is he being legit? Or like, what's going on here? But this is the first time you're like, okay, this guy is not here to play. Like,
yeah, this is scary stuff.
Yeah, like at first it's kind of it's almost like cute and flirty, like kind of like, I don't know, like I could imagine people would be more open to being this way on the phone now. Again, like we said, you would just hang up. Maybe this is the equivalent of like, you know, again, going back to like internet dating where it's like that mystery of somebody, you don't know who they are or what they look like until you actually get to see them.
Right.
Yeah, but that when he told her that, I got scared.
Yes, definitely.
So she asks him if it's a joke, and he slyly tells her, no, it's more of a game, really. And can you handle that, blondie? So now he knows that she's a blonde, and it's like, is that a coincidence? Like, is he really looking at her? Right. She starts running through the house. She's locking her door. She's looking out her window, and she's like, can you see me? And she tells him through her tears that have now started, listen, I'm 2 seconds away from calling the police. He says they never make it in time. We're out in the middle of nowhere. And she asks him, what do you want? His response is to see what your insides look like.
Gah.
Yeah, so first he's going to cut her like a fish, and he wants to see what her insides look like. Very graphic.
So romantic.
I know. What a catch. She begins crying even more, and she hangs up the phone. And at this point, she's almost collapsing from shock. Now, the doorbell rings, and she screams.
Yeah.
And she's yelling out, she's screaming out, who's there? So the male calls again, and she asks him who's there, and he says, haven't you ever seen scary movies? It's like a death wish. You don't ever ask who's there. It's like going and investigating a strange noise or something. And she's like, look, she's like, look, you've had your fun now. You better just leave her else. And the caller says, or else what? And then this is when she tries to get all tough. She says, or else my boyfriend, he'll be here any second, and he'll be pissed when he finds out. And he says, I thought you didn't have a boyfriend. And she's like, I lied. I do have a boyfriend, so your ass better be gone. And he sarcastically responds, sure. I'm shaking. He's like the voice is so like sly, like whatever, girl, like he's challenging her. And she's like, he's big and he plays football and he'll kick the shit out of you. And he's all, ooh, I'm scared. I'm shaking in my boots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, mocking Casey. And she just tells him, hey, you better leave. And this is when, again, it just keeps getting more and more sinister. And I know we're laughing, but like while you're watching it, it's not like as scary as it's not as funny as we're making this sound.
Oh, okay? Yeah, not at all. Not at all. This is serious business here, folks.
Yeah. So he says, would his name happen to be Steve?
Yikes. That's creepy.
Yeah. So Casey's shocked. She's speechless. Her mouth is wide open. And in a very scared voice, she's like, how do you know his name? And the male caller tells her, turn off the lights. And she's sobbing. She turn on the light. She turns them on. And we see a male, and he's sitting in a chair, and he's all tied up, and he's wearing his like Letterman's jacket. So, it's we don't know for sure it's her boyfriend, but it's her boyfriend. Okay.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh my God. And she realizes it is indeed her boyfriend, Steve. And she starts to open the door. And the caller tells her, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And she asks him, where are you? And he tells her, you got to guess. And she pleads with him not to hurt him. And he's like, look, that all depends on you. And she keeps asking him, like, why are you doing this? He tells her, I want to play a game. She cries no. And he yells, then he dies right now. And she's like, no. She says, well, what kind of game? And he commands her to turn off the light, and we'll see what kind of game. We can tell on her face that she doesn't want to, but the caller tells her, just do it. The caller says, here's how we play it. I'll ask a question. You get it right. And Steve lives. She continues begging, please don't do this. And he says, hey, it's an easy category, movie trivia. She's still begging him not to do it. And the caller says, hey, I'll even give you a warm-up question. And he asks her, who's the killer in Halloween? And he says, come on, it's your favorite movie. She gives in, and she responds to her sobs, Michael Myers. The caller praises her and says it's time for the real question. And she's still begging for him to stop. And he says, no, we can't stop now. And he asks her, who is the killer in Friday the 13th? And she has a moment of like triumph. She's like, Jason. And this joy is very short-lived because he tells her, "You're wrong." And she yells, "No, it's Jason. I've seen that movie 20 times." To which he responds, "And you should know Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, was the original killer. Jason doesn't show up until the sequel." And he tells her, "I'm afraid," the wrong answer. And he says, "Hey, lucky for you, there's a bonus round. But poor Steve, I'm afraid he's out."
Ooh. And they weren't kidding.
No. And I kind of think that's shady because, yeah, she's the original one in part 1. But after that, it's all Jason. I would have given her credit if this was like official trivia, but
definitely.
I don't think the killer's trying to give her any credit.
No, they don't play fair.
Yeah. So Steve is indeed out. She turns on the lights and we see that he's been disemboweled, and the caller's laughing at her and reminds her, "Hey, we're not finished yet. Final question. Are you ready yet?" And she's like, "Please leave me alone." He says, "Answer the question and I will." Mm-hmm. And he asks her, "What door am I at?" And there's 2 main doors to your house, the front door and the patio doors. If you answer correctly, you win. Very simple. She's like, "Don't do this. I can't. I won't." And he's like, "Your call." We then get a jump scare because somebody comes crashing in through the patio doors with a knife, and Casey takes off running. She's running through the house, running through the kitchen, which is now smoky because remember she left that Jiffy Pop on the stove. Yeah. She smartly though, she's like in the kitchen and she sees there's like a butcher's block, so she grabs a knife out of there. And she's trying to go outside quietly, but we see the masked and hooded killer. He's wearing the typical screaming mask with the black hood.
Yeah.
So we see him running through the house, and at the same time, while this is going on, there's a car coming up, and they have a long driveway. It's so crazy, right? All of the houses in this movie, I didn't realize it till we started doing research. Like these are all these like they must have good money. They all have big houses, and like
right.
A lot of them are in the middle of nowhere. Yeah,
they're like McMansions.
They're bigger than McMansions. They're huge because so it's a really long driveway, and Casey's trying to get low. She's trying to sneak up on the killer, and he's inside holding the phone. He breaks through another window between them, and she pushes him down, and she's now running with the phone in her hand. He jumps up and he manages to catch her, and this is when we get our first on-screen thing because Steve, we didn't see him on screen, and she gets stabbed in her chest. And she falls, and he stabs her again, and he chokes her. But she kicks him in the nuts.
Yeah.
and he stumbles off. And at this point, I think something's going on with her vocal cords. And because she's crying out, "Mom," because her parents have since shown up. And they've entered the house. The dad is looking around. He's in shock. He sees the smoke. He sees the mess. And Casey's getting away from him. She's running, but now he's behind her. He knocks her over. I'm sure at this point she's probably in shock and she's had blood loss. So she's probably struggling. He's on the ground. And this is when she reaches up, and it's really iconic. Like she pulls off his mask, and we think we're going to see the killer, but we don't. Instead, he just drives the knife into her again. The mom and dad are in the house and they're calling out for Casey. They see the Jiffy Pop burning. The mom throws it in the sink. And the dad tells the wife, "Hey, go call the police." And the mom's trying to use the phone to call the police, but it's not working. But this is where it actually gets really sad. Like I didn't realize how dramatic this scene was. I don't know if, again, it hits me harder because I'm a parent.
Right.
Because I wasn't a parent when this came. I mean, clearly, I just watched this movie to see people die.
We were teenagers.
We're a little more heartless at that point, right?
Exactly.
But you hear the mom, and Casey, because Casey had the phone, the mom can hear her, and she's like, "Casey," and the mom's like, "Oh my God, I can hear her," and the dad grabs the phone, and they're both terrified. Like I said, the scene hits really hard. The mom is crying into the phone, "Casey, baby," and they call out her name into the phone, and then we just hear a dial tone. Yeah. The husband tells his wife, "Hey, get in the car, go drive to the Mackenzies," and the mother's distraught, saying, "No, not my daughter." And he's telling her again, "Call the police." She walks out of the house, and from the porch, she just screams because she sees Casey's hanging from a tree. She's dead. She's bloody, and the dad emerges to see the same thing, shocked. And the camera does this really cool, like, zoom in shot on Casey. And then it just goes to black.
Yeah.
And we hear like a thunder strike sound.
Yeah. It was intense.
Yeah. Like I didn't read it with as much intense because we found some comedy in it. But this scene's really dramatic.
Yes.
like watching it like through like a serious lens. If you're somebody who's not into horror movies and you watch this, it would probably scare the crap out of you.
Oh yeah, it scared the crap out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah, I don't think it scared me. I think I was more pissed for Drew Barrymore. I'm like, is that it? Like, I kept wondering, is she dead? Like, that's it? Like,
well, yeah,
because they did so much hype for. She was on all the trailers. Like, we really thought like she was the main character, but she is indeed dead. Like, her character, that was it. They did the old switcheroo, and I think it was
faked
great.
us out.
Yeah, great marketing. I guess this is what Alfred Hitchcock did with Psycho, with the main character Marion Crane. You think she's gonna be like throughout the movie, and she dies pretty early on. Right. Janet Leigh, which is Jamie Lee Curtis's mom, right? Another couple of Scream Queens, and we're gonna be talking about Jamie Lee Curtis a lot because this movie has a lot of callbacks. Like we said, it's very meta with horror. Yeah. We both were talking about earlier the Mackenzies, right?
Yes, Halloween.
Yeah, that's from Halloween. Yeah, if the original Halloween movie with Jamie Lee Curtis, when she sends the kids that she's babysitting, right? She sends them off to go get help at another house. I think because the phone's not working. She's like, not working. She's like, hey, go to the Mackenzie's house.
Yep.
So yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I love. There's so many of those, and like I said, we won't catch all of them, but any of them that we're aware of, we'll try to throw those out to you guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that scene was wild. I've even had people I know that they've told me, they're like, oh, I don't like that movie Scream. It really scared me. And I'm like, really? Like, it's so funny and this and that. And then this was the first time kind of really like taking in the movie and trying to watch it at times with a more serious lens, that I was like, oh, that was kind of intense. Like that whole, the way she's scared. I mean, Drew Barrymore did so good, and you really feel bad for her and for her parents. Ugh.
Yeah, but it captures the viewer. It makes you intrigued. You don't want to give up on the movie. You're like, okay, now I'm invested.
Yeah.
I remember feeling that way. Like, I was scared, but I was like, now I need to know.
Yeah, exactly.
We are now in Sydney's bedroom, and this is Neve Campbell. Ooh. It's Neve Campbell, right? Yeah.
I think
Neve Campbell.
Yeah, Neve.
We get a jump scare when her boyfriend, Billy, played by Skeet Ulrich, sneaks into her window. And this is like a shout out to Psycho and Halloween. And that was creepy. Like, he's just like, hey, what's up? In the window.
Yeah. His name is a shout out, right? Like Billy Loomis. He shouts out to Psycho, and then because that name Loomis, right? It was a character in Psycho, and it's a character's name in Halloween. So I love it.
Yeah. And then it's like, it's just a callback to all these old school movies, and I love that so much. Sydney's dad comes after hearing her scream, but she assures him that it was nothing. Don't worry about it, Dad. It's fine. We hear Sid and her dad discuss his leaving tomorrow on a business trip, and they run through their usual checklist of him staying at the Hilton near the airport, blah, 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 all the stuff he has to do. Sydney asks Billy what he is doing and, like, why are you here, dude? And he says that he was watching The Exorcist, and it got him thinking of her because the mom was edited for TV and none of the good stuff was shown. And I'm like, oh, that's what reminds you of her?
Throwing up Reagan? Like, is that that's what I would think of immediately. I'm like, okay, she's kind of underage. I don't know. Odd.
Yeah, it was so odd.
Yeah.
He relates this to their relationship, saying how they've been together for 2 years and they've slowed down lately in terms of fooling around. So you know what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
It's what they all want in these movies.
Yeah, a theme that we keep running into.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
In all of the movies that we've covered anyway.
Right. They make out while a cover of Blue Oyster's Cult, Don't Fear the Reaper, is playing. Good song, by the way.
Great song.
When Billy tries to get a little touchy-feely, Sydney stops him, and he leaves back out of the window. So he goes in that way, he comes out that way. And he does this often. Yikes. They give a little kissy-kissy, and she flashes her boobies at him. Nothing says I love you more than a flash of the boobs.
Yeah.
The next day at Woodsboro High School, the lawn is full of reporters and police activity. We are now introduced to the characters of Gail Weathers, played by Courtney Cox. She works for the media outlet Top Story. She explains how Woodsboro has no arrests and no formal media statement has been made by the police. Sydney is now startled from behind by her best friend Tatum. That's Rose McGowan. What a cutie patootie.
Yes, yes.
She tells Sid how Casey Becker and Steve Orth were splattered movie killed, ripped open from end to end. And I'm like, that is extra. Did you have to be that graphic?
Yeah. I'm like, okay, you should, just the way she's, oh yeah, from end to end. She just says it like it's everyday gossip. Like, oh, this is the normal chisme that we have to talk about today.
Exactly. Did you hear? Oh my gosh. So Tatum says how this was the worst crime they've seen in years. Even worse than, and she trails off and she stops talking, insinuating that it doesn't need to be said, which the viewers will learn about later. It's an awkward situation.
Yeah.
Sydney is called out of class into the principal's office to be interviewed by police. This seems to be something that is being done with all of the students. Before she enters the office, the principal, who is played by Henry Winkler, the Fonz, explains to the sheriff and the sheriff's deputy that she was the daughter of and again, another person not finishing their thought in regards to what has happened in Sydney's past. And everybody knows what he's alluding to anyway. Sheriff Burke is played by Joseph Witt, and Deputy Dwight Riley, or Deputy Dewey, is played by David Arquette. And they ask her a few questions that are not very important. The next scene we see is Tatum, Sydney, Billy, and two new characters sitting on the edge of a water feature on this school campus. We have Stu, that's Matthew Lillard, and Randy, Jamie Kennedy, which I love Jamie Kennedy, by the way. Yeah. He's a hoot. Yeah. They're gossiping about the murders of Casey and Steve. Stu says that he was asked by police if he likes to hunt. And I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, that's when you're like, if they asked me that, I'd be like, why? Like, I'd probably be way too curious. I'd be trying to get more details out of the cops. Like, why do you want to know?
Which, that is a really strange question. Did they find something? We don't know, right?
Yeah.
Tatum is offended that she wasn't asked if she likes to hunt. And Stu says, there's no way a girl could have killed them. And, like, that's how he talks. That's his, like, inflection of voice.
Yeah, yeah.
And Randy's like, because they were gutted. Tatum says, that is sexist. A girl could look at Basic Instinct. Come on, Sharon Stone, right?
Yeah.
Randy explains that it was an ice pick, not exactly the same thing. This is, again, another nod to horror films and a theme that we will see throughout this movie. Stu then says they were hollowed out, and the fact is, it takes a man to do something like that. And Tatum says, or a man's mentality.
Get him, Tatum,
Sydney,
get him.
I know, right? Sydney then asks with a scared voice, how do you gut someone? And Stu, you know, Stu's a character. He does not hold back ever. So he tells her, you take a knife and you slit them from groin to sternum. Billy gives him a pissed off face and tells him to have tact. This is when we find out that Stu used to date Casey. And Randy says, yeah, before she dumped him for Steve. Ugh. Yeah. Tatum says, I thought you dumped her for me. And Stu says, I did. I love you. You're amazing. Tatum confirms Stu was with her last night and he could not be the killer. Not my Stu. Never. Randy says he was working and then makes jokes about Casey's liver being in the mailbox. Ew. And Stu adds to the joke when Sydney gets up to leave by saying, you better leave her alone. Leave her alone.
You know, you use that, you know, that's a line I use in my everyday life. Leave her alone. And like, I know. Only the real ones catch it.
Yep, exactly. Billy punches Stu and Tatum looks upset. He laughs and says, what? Leave her alone was a joke. These are the first hints viewers are given to start making speculations on who the killer is. And also, if you pay attention to them sitting, those two, Billy and Stu, are the only ones wearing black boots. Everybody else has colored shoes on. Randy has green shoes. Tatum has white shoes. And I think Nev Campbell is wearing brown shoes, or maybe
you got
red
a better
shoes.
memory.
I can't remember. Yeah.
And that makes sense because we see boots later throughout.
Yes, we see a lot of boots.
Yeah.
So now we also have some possible motives. Casey's the ex-girlfriend who left him for a jock, yada yada. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like we said, this is full of whodunit moments. You have moments, and I do remember that from my first viewing, being like, was it person? Was it this person? With this person? I never had like a conclusive thought as to like, this is the killer. I just kind of kept jumping around like,
yeah, same.
I was just waiting to find out.
Yeah, it really makes you think. You bounce back and forth a lot.
Yeah, and I love those kind of things. I love reading books that are the same way and watching movies that way. Mm-hmm. All right, so in our next scene, Sydney arrives home on the school bus, and she's talking on the phone. She's on her back patio now, and she's talking to Tatum, and she's like, decides that she's going to stay at Tatum's house because her dad is out of town until Sunday. And Tatum says, hey, I'll pick you up after practice. And Sydney says, yeah, I know, she's having a hard time, that everything is like deja vu because of the reporters and everything. And Tatum says, hey, I'll be there by 7. And Sid goes back into her house and she locks her door. And later Sid is all packed up and she's watching the news. She's sitting on her couch and we see Gail Weathers again. And Gail's explaining how it was only a year ago that Maureen Prescott, a wife and mother, was found. Trigger warning, y'all. Okay. She was raped and murdered not far from their peaceful town square. Sid looks very upset. Yeah. She turns off the TV. She looks at the clock and we see it's about 6:45 p.m. and she falls asleep on the couch. She wakes up and it's about 30 minutes later and the phone is ringing and it's Tatum. She says, hey, practice is running late. I'm on my way. Sid seems very upset and she's like, hey, it's after 7. And Tatum responds playfully, hey, don't worry. Casey and Steve didn't invite it until way after 10. It's like this poor
silver linings.
Right. I mean, first they were getting mad at the other ones for making jokes, and now Tatum's in on it, making jokes.
Yeah.
Sid says, oh, that's comforting. And Tatum says, hey, I'm gonna go grab a video from the video rental store and then I'll be on my way. Yeah. So the phone rings again a few seconds later and we're greeted by our same male voice from the beginning of the film with Casey. So his voice is flirting with Sid, and she says, I like your voice. It's sexy, Randy, inferring that she believes this is Randy pulling a prank on her. Mm-hmm. He then asks her if she likes scary movies, and she says, oh, come on, I don't watch that shit. And he's like, why not? Are you too scared? And she says, no, it's just, what's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
Yeah.
I love. This is part of why I'm like, we have to go scene by scene. There's so many great lines.
I know.
And in my head, I'm picturing like other movies, and they use that line on the trailer. And I think they show a scene where it looks like she's like taking off her shirt or something.
Yeah.
So it was such a great way that they tied it all back in. So after this great line, the caller's like, hey, are you alone in the house? And this is a shout out to the 1978 horror film with the same name. And I want to say, and I'm not 100% sure, I didn't get a chance to do a rewatch. I want to say in Black Christmas, which is from 74. There's another similar line. So, and they both have the same concept where there's like a caller and we find out the caller's there in the house. So she still thinks it's Randy, and she's like, this is so unoriginal of you, Randy. And the caller says, that's because I'm not Randy. And so at this point, it's like, dun, dun, dun.
Big yikes.
Yeah, because we're thinking, hey, it's Randy. He's being silly. He's just pulling a prank on Sid. She's starting to wonder, is it really him? So she calls his bluff, and she unlocks her door, and she steps out onto her front porch. And she's challenging the caller about who he is. And he says, hey, I'm right here. But she doesn't see any obvious signs of him and laughs. She even mockingly, she like puts her finger in her nose, like she's picking her nose. And she's like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And when the caller doesn't say anything, she's like, nice try, Randy. Tell Tatum to hurry up. Okay, because we know he works at a video store at this point. We forgot to mention that earlier. And so we're assuming that Tatum's at the video store with him and that they're playing a prank. And the caller now angrily says, if you hang up on me, you'll die like your mother. Do you want to die, Sydney? Your mother sure didn't. And she tells him, fuck you, you creep. And she goes inside and locks her door.
Yeah.
And you think this is over, but just like in KC, the ghost face masked killer, he emerges from a closet door and he pushes her down. She drops the cordless phone. She kicks him, but he still manages to pin her down and slam her head. He's now taunting her with a knife at her neck, and he's about to drive it in, but she kicks the killer in the groin area and manages to get up and run up the stairs as the killer chases her. This is when we also start to see, like, that this killer, like, he gets his nuts kicked several times.
A lot of nut kicking in this movie.
He's kind of... Well, I guess I'm kind of giving it away. The killer's kind of clumsy. I guess I could say he, right? It's a male voice without giving up too much stuff. But yeah he's kind of clumsy, and I love that these women get the best of him at times.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. So she gets into her room. She manages to close the door, but it's not completely blocked. So he's waving his knife at her, trying to swipe at her through the door. But yeah. So she doesn't have the phone. So she's got like this cool, I don't know what kind of program this was. I mean, she manages to use her computer, and this is like very early looking internet. She uses some sort of software, some program. She calls 911. But at this point, just as Kristen alluded to earlier, Billy emerges through the window.
Dude loves a window.
Yeah.
He loves a window.
He does. He comes in. Yeah, he's amazing at this window business. So he's like, hey, I heard screaming. And she's crying, and she's like hugging him. And she says, there's a killer with a knife. And as she's hugging him, a cell phone falls out of his pocket.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. So she backs up from him, and she's scared that he could be the killer. So she runs to the front door because we're not sure, and she gets a jump scare, right? When she opens the front door, there's a mask just in her face, and it's the ghost face mask. And she screams, as does the person who's holding the mask. And it's none other than Deputy Dewey, David Arquette. Yeah. So throughout the film, he gets teased for not being the best of police officers. Yeah. His poor sister Tatum is running him through the ringer all the time. Making fun of him, calling him Deputy Dewey, or just calling him Dewey, not even calling him Deputy.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, I'm sorry. He says, I'm sorry, I found this mask. And he says, hey, I'm calling for other cops to come. And at this point, we see Billy's been handcuffed. He's getting read his Miranda rights. And he's pleading that he didn't do anything. And please call my dad. And he's yelling from the police car, Sydney, as he's being driven away. So Tatum arrives there, and she's mocking her brother. And he's like, you can't be here. And she's like, hey, Sid's staying with us. Her father's out of town. And this is where like you get the like sibling... like not rivalry, like just siblings fighting like with each
bickering.
Other. Yeah, there you go, that's the word I'm looking for. They're bickering, and he's like, does mom know? And she's like, yes, doofus. And I totally forgot that she calls him that, because if you think about the movie, the scary movies, right, which are like the spoofs of Scary Movie, which I think the first two were done by the Wayans brothers, and then they went downhill, but that's a whole nother episode. But I love that because the character of Dewey in that is called Deputy Doofus.
Yes,
to make fun of him. And I met that actor, David Sheridan. Ooh. Yeah, I met him and Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp, and they're like really good friends in real life. And I was there to see her, but he was like, I'll take your photo and everything. But he was a really nice guy. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so the guy that plays Deputy Doofus. Anyway, so I found it funny. I hadn't caught that until I watched it for this episode. I was like, oh, that's where they got the name Doofus for the
That's
scary
so
movie.
funny.
Yeah. So Gail, she arrives on the scene. She's being the pushy bitch that she is. She's being a bitch to her cameraman, Kenny. And she's chasing Tatum. She's chasing Tatum. And she's asking for her to give her some information. And Tatum's like, you're a real pain in the ass. I love Tatum. Like, she's always like, she keeps it real. She's always beating people for filth. And she drives off. So Gail, she's now berating her cameraman for moving slowly. And this is again where you're just like, what a bitch. Because she's telling him, hey, you're overweight and you need to move your fat ass quicker. And like, she just does some really demeaning stuff to him. And this is where we see how like she on camera, she acts like a really nice, sweet reporter. But like, she really has this demeaning side to her. So.
She really does, yeah.
And it makes you, and you could tell they do it on purpose, because you're like, you don't want to root for her, but she's a big part of this, spoiler, the whole franchise, of course, you know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are now at the police station. The police are unable to locate or get a hold of Sydney's father. Billy is in the sheriff's office being questioned with his father present. He looks at Sydney through the glass as she's sitting next to Dewey at the desk and mouths, "I love you."
trying to keep the shade off of him.
Billy pleads with the sheriff that he didn't kill anyone, and Billy's father is shocked to find out that he had snuck into Sydney's house the night before. The dad claims everyone has a cellular phone. You can look up the records if you want. He didn't do anything. He's innocent. So the next scene shows Gail telling Kenny to move it yet again. She's so pushy. She wants to report live. You know, time is of the essence.
Yeah.
Billy is escorted out of the office, again pleading with Sydney that she knows him and he didn't do this. You know me, Sid. We again get to see how Tatum frequently degrades her brother at work, talking down to him in front of the sheriff. Gail runs into Sydney when she is leaving the police station, and she asks her what happened, and Tatum tells her to leave her alone. Sid says she's just doing her job and asks Gail, "How's your book going?" And Gail says it should be out later this year, and Sydney says she'll look for it. Gail tells her, "I'll send you a copy," to which Sid replies with a punch right to the face and calls her a bitch.
Love it.
We love it.
I mean, I shouldn't, but, you know.
No, you know.
Anyway, only later we find out what we should love. But, I mean, she's in the right. Yeah.
Yeah, she is. Inside of Tatum's room, she relishes what Sid did to Gail, and they debate whether Billy could have actually done the murders. Tatum's mom tells her that she has a phone call, and she assumes that it's her father. So the phone is for Sydney. So she goes to the phone thinking it's her dad, and it's our favorite caller who tells her, "Poor Billy boyfriend, an innocent guy, doesn't stand a chance with you. You got the wrong guy again, and you'll find out soon enough who the real killer is." Side note, the mother of Tatum and Dewey is the actress Frances Lee McCain, who was Billy Pelter's mom in The Gremlins.
Yes, I know.
I love Gremlins.
Yeah, we did an episode. I've done an episode on that, but yeah, I didn't know that till this, like, doing this podcast. Like, I had never caught that before.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. They do a little switcheroo, I think, though, in, like, the next scene. Like, I don't think it's actually her. I feel like it's like a stand-in, but anyway.
Oh, maybe magic. So.
Yeah. Even though it's supposed to be the mom.
The next morning in the kitchen of the Riley household, we see the news talking about Sydney's attack the night before, and we are told that Sydney has testified against Cotton Weary, who was convicted of raping and murdering her mom, Maureen. Dewey tells Sid that Billy was released since his cellular bill was cleaned, and that they're cross-referencing calls between Steve and Casey's phone in hopes of finding the killer. Dewey drops the two girls off at school, which again, full of reporters that want to hound Sydney. They're like, "Come talk to us. We want to know what happened, blah, blah, blah." Gail is there as well, and Sydney confronts her about her book and information related to her mother and Gail's belief that Cotton is actually innocent. So now we know that's what the book's about. Yeah. Maureen. Gail claims, he had an affair with your mom, but he didn't kill her. And someone else left wearing his jacket and framed Cotton by placing the coat in his vehicle. Gail puts a seed of doubt in Sydney's head by telling her this, and the killer's still out there, and these killings are related. So she's like, you see the little things turning. What is it? Mechanics? I don't know. The gears.
Yeah, the gear. There's the mouse on the wheel.
Yeah, that's what I have in mind. I got the little gerbil.
I was gonna. Oh, there you go. It's a gerbil. You're right. I don't know my rodents. That's what I have too. Oh my gosh.
We're a rodent positive podcast here.
If you saw our last episode, we had Anthony Antero. We had Anteros. He's a cosplayer.
Yeah.
He had a raccoon on, and he has that. And he has a possum mask. He's telling me all his different things. I was like, "Whoa, you're really into rodents."
I love that for him. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Gail confides in Kenny that she wants to figure out who the killer is and save Cotton's life because he's on death row. And he might be, toast if they don't get to the end of this.
Yeah.
She excitedly exclaims that this will boost her career. Yay! Go, Gail.
Yeah, this is we find out how ambitious she is.
Yeah. She's a go-getter, that Gail.
Yeah, and ambitious and willing to step on people if she needs to.
Oh, yeah, definitely. In the school hallways, we see teenagers running through the halls in the ghost face mask, and they're screaming, which is terrifying. I would be really freaked out if I were there.
I'm terrible because when I watch it the first time, I remember just, you know what? I did see it with my brother.
Oh, did you?
It's coming to me because I remember being here. We're like, he was like a senior and I was a freshman, and we're like laughing our asses off. Like, now as an educator, I would be like horrified for this student.
Right.
But at the time, as a silly high schooler, I would have gotten a kick out of that brain.
Right.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine. Sid bumps into Billy and he exclaims, I'm set free and I didn't do this. I'm innocent, especially since I was in jail. And didn't you receive a phone call at Tatum's house? He asks her why she's acting strange with him, and she reminds him that she's still dealing with her mother's death. And he says, that was a year ago. I got over my mother leaving. Like the two are even the same, yeah. Sir.
No, they are so far different.
Right.
So far from each other, yeah.
Definitely. She tells him they're not the same, and he appeases her and agrees, but just says he wants his girlfriend back. And she leaves.
Yeah. That scene was very, again, nightmare, all the hallways. Like, all the hallway scenes make me think of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah,
there's
definitely.
so many scenes in their high school.
So
all right, so now we have the principal, and he's getting real snippy. He's got some scissors, and he's cutting up the ghost face mask that the two teenage prankster boys had. And they're pleading with them that their punishment is not fair because he's decided he's going to expel them for their actions. And he tells them fairness would be ripping their insides out, hanging them from a tree to expose them for the heartless, desensitized little shits that they are. There's so much to the scene. This man, I can't do it. I don't have the scissors. But he's like waving the scissors. He's waving the scissors and these kids like really close to their face. And this was very insensitive, but you can't do that with students. You can't do that with kids. Students.
No.
And he doesn't have the power to just like expel them like that. There's a process, guys, but it's a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
But this makes us think he could be the killer, right? I mean, the way he's handling these scissors.
Yeah, he's very aggressive.
Yeah, you're like, ooh, could he be the killer? So again, we're still wondering. Mm-hmm. So Sydney, since her conversation with Billy, she's run into a bathroom stall and she's hiding because two girls enter, and unfortunately she hears them talking badly about her. They're calling her mother a slut, and they're even inferring that maybe Sydney's the killer, that maybe she snapped from having to deal with everything from her mother's death. And after they leave, she's alone, and she leaves her stall, and she's at a sink washing her hands, and she hears somebody whispering her name. And here comes the ghost face again, emerges from a stall, and we get a good look at his boots before she runs off.
Yes, the boots.
There we go. You were right. I couldn't believe I didn't catch those boots earlier, but yeah, we're going to continue to see boots and wonder
lots of boots.
Yeah. So outside of the school, we see Gail, and she introduces herself to Deputy Dewey outside, and she's flirting with him. She really knows how to be flirty to get what she wants, and Dewey's resisting her initially, but by the end of the conversation, he's flirting back. She's even mentioning how she's popular with a certain age range up to like 24, and she's like, oh, you're 25, you're just out of my age range. And he even tells her, hey, I was 24 for a whole year. Yeah, so we see the budding of like flirting and maybe a relationship. Mm-hmm. The principal announces over the loudspeakers, he says that school's going to be ended early and there's going to be a citywide curfew in effect until at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
So outside, Stu thanks Sydney, and he says, hey, on behalf of the entire student body, we want to thank you. And he's like, hey, let's take advantage of there being no school and his parents out of town. In a typical teenage fashion, he says they're going to throw a party at his house. Ooh. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
This was me. My mom and dad do listen to these episodes. That would have totally been me. I'm like, sweet, no school, let's have a party. His parents are out of town. I'd be collecting money for the cake. I was a terrible youth.
Oh, I was such a dork. That wasn't me. That was not me.
Like it was like years later, my mom and dad found out half the stuff I did. I was like, oh, sorry. But I just love it. Like, again, I love like the teenager aspect of this. It's like, oh, let's have a party. Like, there's a killer loose. Oh, well, let's get the beer.
No big deal. It's fine.
Yeah. So school, everybody's gone, and we're back in Principal Henry's office, and he's being silly. He's putting on the ghost face mask, and he's looking at himself in the mirror, and he's like trying to scare himself. So this is when you're kind of like, maybe he's not the killer. I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe he's practicing. Maybe he's just a silly old man. We don't know.
Right.
But the only person that is around is the school janitor, Fred. And when he thinks he hears a noise, he looks out in the hallway, and he's like, who's there? And he's like, oh, it's just you, Fred. And what's great is Fred is wearing a red and green striped sweater. He's mopping the floor, but he has on a brown fedora hat.
Yep.
And this is a wonderful cameo of the director of Scream and Nightmare on Elm Street. It is none other than Wes Craven dressed as Fred,
aka
Freddy
love
Krueger.
that. So good. I can't believe I didn't notice that until like the other day when I watched this.
Yeah, I think I noticed that like on one of my, probably the first or if not the second. I don't think I knew that it was Wes Craven until years later, which I thought, I'm like, how cool. I love when there's cameos like that.
I do too. It's really neat seeing that.
Yeah. So the principal, he's searching around the hallways, the offices, and closet, and he's still like, where did that noise come from? And just when we think no one is there, he closes his office door, and Ghostface is hiding behind there.
Oh my God.
Stabs the principal, and we get a cool shot of Ghostface reflection in his eyes. Again, this isn't something I caught in earlier viewing, so if you're paying attention, it's really cool. You could see in his eyeballs like the reflection of Ghostface.
That is so cool they did that. Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's also cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sweet detail. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now Sid and Tatum are at their house, and they're sitting on the front porch, and they're discussing the possibility that Cotton could actually be innocent. Mm-hmm. And Tatum, she doesn't really feel comfortable admitting this, but she's kind of like, that's kind of what happens with rumors. You hear them, and you hear them so much that maybe you start to believe them.
Yeah.
And Sydney says, yeah. And Sydney says, but if it's true, then the killer's still out there. And Tatum tells her, don't go there, Sid. You're starting to sound like a Wes Carpenter flick or something. Wes Carpenter, again, we haven't mentioned their names enough today. Exactly. Wes Craven and John Carpenter. John Carpenter, director of Halloween and a ton of movies. And of course, we've already talked about Wes Craven. So she says, hey, don't freak yourself out. Okay? We got a long night ahead of us.
They really do. And now we're at the video store where Randy's working at. Stu and Randy are chatting. Randy explains that lots of people are renting from the horror section because of what's going on in town. We get a girl who asks about the movie with E.T.'s mom, who is a werewolf. And Randy tells her this movie is The Howling. And you guys covered that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Me and my good friend, John David, the author, we covered The Howling. So go listen to that episode.
Yeah, do it. Stu is teasing Randy that he could be the killer since Randy is upset that Billy is not. He mocks that Billy is standing in the horror section saying it's poor taste since he's the only suspect right now. It is confirmed that Randy has a crush on Sydney. Wah, wah, wah. He says maybe he will have a chance with Sid now. Stu says it doesn't even make sense that Billy would kill his own girlfriend. Why would he do that? And Randy says, come on, it's prom night revisited. And that's also a callback to Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
Love her.
Yeah, and the 1980 film, yeah.
And that there is almost reason to kill your girlfriend. Stu tells Randy he has no chance with Sid and tells Randy he suspects it's Sid's dad since they can't find him anywhere. I'm like, really? Come on now.
Poor dad, yeah.
Randy goes on a tirade that the dad is probably already dead and will turn up in the end. He says there's a formula for these things. People should just watch movies. He turns and bumps into Billy, who says, you would be the prime suspect because you're a crazy movie guy. Randy agrees he is a good suspect. And when Stu asks what would be his motive, he responds, it's the millennium. Motives are incidental.
It's the millennium. I mean, we were approaching the millennium.
Yeah, and it was a very scary time. You didn't know what Y2K was going to bring.
Y2K, yeah.
Billy walks away as Stu compliments Randy's use of the word millennium. And Randy again says to Stu, you tell me that's not a murderer, referring to Billy. He's on to something. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We now see the city. It's shutting down and everybody's putting up closing early signs because of the curfew. Sydney says it's like the movie The Town Who Dreaded Sundown, a reference to a 1976 horror crime movie. Tatum asks Sydney who she thinks would play her in the movie version of her life. And Sydney isn't sure, and Dewey says, I could see you as a young Meg Ryan. And she thanks him, but says with my luck, they'd cast Tori Spelling. And didn't they do that, kind of?
Yeah,
in part 2?
I guess we're I've been trying not to spoil too much of the franchise, but they kind of do cast her in part 2 because they make a movie within the movie, right, about Gail's book.
Yeah.
And they have a scene they play one of the scenes and it's Tori Spelling playing her. So I love it.
That's so hilarious. Now at the store to pick up some food for the party, the two girls discuss how Sydney is an anorexic virgin. And I'm like, oh.
Let's I didn't get that. Did you get that?
I mean,
that kind of went over my head.
Well, virgins are usually never killed, right, in horror movies, or they are killed. I don't know.
We'll find out.
But, also in the 90s, like, body image was really bad. Like, the standards of beauty, I don't know. But anyway, Tatum says...
So it was literal then, is what, like, kind of what they...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
And a virgin. I didn't know if it was, like, she was like a type of... I don't know. I'm thinking way more into this than I need to.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just know, like, for the times, like, the standard of beauty was really bad. Everybody had to be a size 0. And then Sydney was a virgin. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Tatum says it's not a big deal. Billy and his penis don't deserve you, Sid. I agree.
Tatum with the man. She's a good friend. I mean, she keeps it real, and she's always there, keeping it, telling. I don't know where I'm going with this talk. We're just gonna cut that out.
That's fine. We're outside. Dewey and the sheriff are talking about how the calls have led back to Sydney's father, Neil Prescott. Dewey wonders if the cellular was cloned, and the sheriff reminds Dewey tomorrow is the anniversary of Maureen Prescott's death. So obviously it's him, duh.
Cool. Yeah. Makes sense.
They will keep the curfew in effect and roadblocks up in hopes he will return home so they can assure he is the man. The sheriff puts out a cigarette with his boot, which looks kind of similar to Ghostface boots. That made you think. I love how they keep, like, messing with your mind in this movie.
Yeah,
so
you keep wondering, is that real? Is that a red herring?
Right.
And what's funny is I didn't even think that, like, but did Dewey wear... This is how they... Even with Dewey, you're like, he's so, like, doofusy.
Yeah, like, he's really lovable.
It didn't occur to me. He's probably wearing boots, too, but I never suspected Dewey. But I had a moment, you had a brief moment where you're like, it could be the sheriff. But then I'm like, maybe it's just, I'm like, well, boots are probably just like standard issue, right? I don't know.
Right.
Either way, it plants a seed in your head.
It does.
Yeah. So now it's nighttime, and we see Gail's news van. It's approaching the road where Stu's house party is occurring. Dewey drops off Sid and Tatum. And again, let's point out how nice these houses are. Okay, we've seen Sydney's house with like her awesome back patio, open concept big patio.
Right.
We saw Casey's house. It's on this beautiful road on its own, and it's the same with Stu's house. It's this beautiful big house off on its own. Yeah, it's amazing. Anyway,
it looks gorgeous.
Yeah. So the party's going on, party's raging. There's beer bongs, you know. I love Stu's wearing his red smoking jacket, which just again add to like the persona that Matthew Lillard plays in this character. It's so great.
Yeah.
So Gail gets out of her news van. She's trying to be very quiet, and Dewey startles her. Mm-hmm. Again, they start flirting, and he invites her to go up to the party with her, and she says, yeah, she'll go with them. And right before she heads out, her cameraman Kenny, he hands her jacket, and sneakily under there is a camera for her because she's going to plant this camera in the party. So in the living room, Randy is having the party goers vote about which movie to put on. They mention Evil Dead. They mention Hellraiser. You know, Stu's even being, you know, his usual like cute flirty self. And he's like, I got a Hellraiser right here, pointing to Tatum. Mm-hmm. And while this is going on, Sydney, she's going through other VHS tapes that Randy has brought, and she's naming them, and she names The Fog, Terror Train, and Prom Night, and all of these star the queen, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yep.
And Jamie says she's a scream queen, and then Stu makes a taboo joke about her set of lungs, and Tatum concludes it's because she has tits that she's in all these movies. Yeah. I love how they're like, oh, nice set of lungs. And they're like, and so Tatum's like, no, tits.
It's the boobies.
Yeah, it's the boobs. The doorbell rings, and Stu tells Tatum to get some more beers. And she refers to herself as the beer wench, and she leaves to get them. Stu is shocked when at the door, it's Gail from Top Story. And Tatum is pissed her brother is there with Gail. She tells him to leave, but before they do, Gail secretly hides a camera next to the TV, facing out onto the entire living room.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what the camera was for, so she could spy on the teenagers.
Yeah.
So Tatum, she goes out to the garage, and it's very cold. It's very, very cold, according to her chest.
Oh, yes, it was.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's one of the, actually, you know what? That's the scene I think they used in the trailer too, when they're talking about a big-breasted girl who should be running out the door, and yeah, we get a good view of her goods there.
Yeah.
She accidentally opens up the garage door and closes it and finds the light switch. She grabs a few beers from the fridge, and she's startled by a cat that goes running out of a pet door in the garage.
Oof.
Ugh. So she tries to go back into the party, but the door that goes into the garage is now locked. So she can't get it open, so she says, I'll just open up the garage door and leave that way. But before she can leave, the garage door closes. And she turns around, and we see a ghost face. Tatum sees him, and she tells him lose the costume and refers to him as Randy, telling him Sid will really flip if she sees you. And she mocks him, and she says, what movie is this? I Spit on Your Garage? Which it's a reference to the 1978 movie I Spit on Your Grave, which, woo, there's a lot going on in that movie.
Oh,
the stomach. She even starts flirting with him, playing along. She's like, please don't kill me. I want to be in the sequel.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And Ghostface doesn't relent, and he's holding on to her. And she's like, it's over, Casper. But then she starts to realize it's not a prank. And Ghostface slashes her arm. Tatum runs away, and she throws beer bottles at him, and he hits him with the freezer door, and she keeps calling him a fucker the whole time. She's like, take that, fucker. And she's like throwing stuff she's throwing beers at him. And again, we start to really see how clumsy he is. And again, shout out to Tatum. She's like she's such a tough character throughout this movie.
Yeah.
She's trying to get away from him, and she can't get out of the garage because the door won't open. So she decides she's going to dash out through the animal door in the garage. But as you think she's getting away, Ghostface had been laid out on the floor. He manages to get up, and he closes the garage door, and it crushes her, and it leaves her body hanging. And Ghostface just enters the house like nothing happened.
Yeah, he's like, no biggie, it's fine.
Yeah, that scene I remember being like, oh, like that was a really good kill. I was like, whoa.
Even when I watched it before, I was like, oh.
Yeah, and then when you look close, you can see it's like probably a mannequin. Like the legs look really fake. But either way, the concept of I'm like, oh, what an original way to kill somebody. I mean, there's in horror you can only reinvent the wheel so many times.
Exactly.
Yeah. So no more Tatum.
Yeah.
So the party's dying down a little more. Sid's calling for Tatum, and Billy shows up at the party. Stu, being the good wingman that he is, he's like suggests to the two of them could go up to his bedroom, to his parents' bedroom. He's like, to talk or whatever, inferring that more is gonna happen between them.
Yeah.
Randy gets mad and he asks, "What's Leatherface doing here?" Love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Okay.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. Randy is upset that he knows that because he now knows he really doesn't have a chance with Sydney. And Stu's like, as if you had a chance. And Randy, he says, as if you had a chance. And he says it like Alicia Silverstone, right? From Clueless.
Clueless.
And
Randy,
yeah. And Randy responds, "Oh, really, Alicia?" And again, that's another great movie, came out the year before. And Stu just gives him like the peace out sign and walks away. I love again, the teenage 90s reference like you were talking about before.
So good. I love that movie too.
Yes. I
so
totally
comforting.
remember that one. Yeah, I remember watching that one too, but not the right podcast.
Exactly. Wrong podcast.
Yeah. All right, so at this point, Gail, she's made it back to her van, and her and Kenny realize that there's a 30-second delay on their feed that they're getting from the camera in the living room. And upstairs, Billy and Sydney are starting to make up, and she decides that she can't keep grieving over her mother and deny who her mother was. And Billy's comforting her, and she says that she's scared that she could turn out like her mother, and that maybe she's a bad seed or something. Oh, okay. So Billy kind of analogizes. He's like, you mean like Jodie Foster's character in Silence of the Lambs, how she couldn't keep thinking, all she could do was keep thinking about her father. And Sydney reminds him, hey, that's a movie. And Billy says, yeah, but life is just one great big movie. Only you can't pick your genre. Again, very meta.
Yeah.
They start to kiss, and they're taking things further. And, this is when they're starting to hook up. Yeah.
Back in the living room, the partygoers are watching the original Halloween movie downstairs. Stu emphasizing on the fact that he wants to see Jamie Lee Curtis's breasts at once.
Yeah.
Randy takes his time to educate that Jamie Lee Curtis didn't show her breasts until the film Trading Places in 1983. She was always the virgin in horror movies, and she never showed her tits until she went legit.
I love that line.
And some girl mocks, well, she couldn't afford a good pair. Okay, whatever. Whatever, hater.
Hater, yeah.
Randy tells her only virgins can outrun the killers. Don't you know the rules? Stu says, what rules? Randy's upset and slams his beer down. He stands up and he begins to school the other teenagers. He is the expert, by the way.
Yeah.
He tells them there are certain rules one must abide in order to successfully survive a horror movie. Number 1, you can never have sex. They boo him and throw popcorn. He tells them it's a big no. Sex equals death. Stu laughs and says, well, then I'm a dead man. Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. To this, they shout happily and clink beers. They're like, yay!
Yeah, I love
Cheers!
it.
Yeah. He tells them it's the sin factor and cheers someone, as he says, an extension of rule number 1. He ends with rule number 3. Never, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back, because you won't be back. Stu interrupts him, and this is one of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm getting another beer. Do you want one? Randy says, sure. And then Stu yells, I'll be right back. And everyone yells, ooh, ah.
Yeah.
They're laughing, and he's walking backwards out the door, faking he is hurt. Randy berates him, telling him, "You push the laws and you'll end up dead. I'll see you in the kitchen with a knife." And he raises his beer at him.
Oh, I love it. I love
yes.
that teenager vibe. The way they're like, "Oh, no beer, no this, no drinking," and they're cheersing and they're throwing popcorn at him and booing him. And
so good.
I love that movie, Trading Places. By the way, I don't know if you've ever seen it. Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd. Oh,
I probably have. I just don't remember the name.
They couldn't make that movie probably in current times because there's a lot of
didn't age well,
offensive stuff, but it's very it's entertaining.
I probably did see it.
You should watch it. It's so fun. It's a great 80s flick. Yeah.
I will check it out again.
It's not a horror movie. It's a comedy.
Yeah, it's a comedy, right?
Yeah.
Dewey pounds on Gail's news van and tells her the sheriff called him to check out a car up on the road that is in the bushes. And he invites Gail to go with him. Gail's like, "Ooh, okay. You want me to come with you? It'll be good for my career." Like, she's thinking that. She doesn't say it. Mm-hmm. Kenny stays behind to watch the video feed. They decide to walk rather than drive, and Dewey uses bad lines on her about constellations. So he's really trying hard with this lady.
Yeah.
More people are leaving the party, and some even ask, "Where's Tatum? Like, where did she go?" And Stu says she probably got pissed at me and bailed. Sure, Jan. Mm-hmm. Upstairs, Sydney and Billy are taking things even further, while at the same time, this scene is juxtaposed against Randy and some of the party goers who are still watching Halloween, and I really love this. So we get the scene where the actress PJ Soul's boobs are briefly shown as Sydney is taking her shirt off, right?
Yeah.
There is never any actually nudity, but it's inferred. So we don't really see Neve Campbell's boobs.
Or the other girls. You can tell it's
yeah.
that line. I mean, you can tell it's that scene. If you're a fan of the movie, you know that's the scene.
Yeah, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
The house phone rings and Randy answers. We now hear the epic song from the 1978 Halloween music titled Laurie's Theme, and that was used whenever Michael Myers' character is lurking around about to kill. Well, Randy is receiving news on the phone. We find out that Principal Himbry's body was found gutted and hanging from the goal post of one of the football fields thingy. I'm not good with the sport.
The goalpost.
I'm not a sports gal here. But yeah, so they're like, "Oh my God, we better get there before they take him down." And I'm like, dude.
Like, really? Like, you're just gonna take him down. You're gonna get there before the police, and the police you're not gonna get in any sort of trouble for that. Drunk teenagers.
No, not at all. They drive off fast, and yeah, they're probably drunk, humming the tune of the Flight of the Valkyries. They almost run over Dewey and Gail, and Dewey's like, "Slow down," like yelling at him, like, "They're not gonna listen to you, dude."
Yeah. So
silly. Dewey pushes Gail out of the road and lands on her body to save her, and then they kiss. After the kiss, she asks him if that's what he was looking for, to which he responds, "My whole life." So romantical. Gail then turns her head and to show him the vehicle that they're looking for. It's right there, and it's Sydney's father's car. They head back. We go back upstairs, and Billy and Sydney are done hooking up, and they're getting dressed. Sid asks Billy who he used as his one phone call on the night that he was arrested. He says, "Well, my dad," but he didn't answer. And Sid says, "I saw the sheriff call." And she looks deep in thought briefly. And Billy says, "You don't still think it was me, do you? Do you think I would call you from jail like that? No way, I called my dad." And she's like, No, it would just be a clever way to throw me off."
Ooh.
Billy looks at her deeply and says, "What do I have to do to prove to you that I am not the killer?" Sid says, "Oh my God," as she's looking over his shoulder and sees Ghostface behind him.
Before we move on, man, that scene though, don't you love how they're playing the Halloween song behind it?
Yes.
You hear the doo doo I don't even know why I'm trying to like sing this, do the beat of that song, but
no, it's okay.
So good. And like his face, like like the camera angle, and man, that was great movie making. Good. Both of those scenes, the part how you said they're juxtaposing it with the nudity scene, and then the music playing, and it's going from like, we just had this like funny conversation, right, where they're giving the rules and everybody's laughing, and then it just like, it gets very quiet and serious, and the music's playing in the background, and Randy's relaying to the teenagers like, hey, they found the principal. It's wild. Even if you're somebody who's like just listening, because I've heard there's some people that say, oh, I just listen to recaps because I'm scared to actually watch the scary movies. Watch those scenes. They're amazing. There's no violence or anything. If there's nothing to be scared of during those two scenes. And now we're at about like 30 minutes left, so that'll kind of help people gauge if they want to go watch it. I don't know, maybe go 40 minutes before the ending. I didn't mark the exact timestamp. Yeah, it
becomes like really menacing too, and I like that.
Yeah, exactly. It goes from happy and fun to menacing. Exactly.
Yeah, so good.
Okay, so Sid had seen, she's seen ghost faces behind him, and Billy is now stabbed several times, and then he turns around and he's got blood on his chest, and he's reaching out to Sid, and he's got a bloody hand hanging out, and he's like, Sid. And she cries, and she immediately runs out of the room as Ghostface is wiping his blood, the blood clean off of the knife. Oh.
And Billy is so convincing.
Yeah, he's just like, Sydney. Yeah, I mean, he's kind of I don't know about his acting, but I feel like they played him that way on purpose. I don't know.
Yeah.
So she leaves out of a pocket door, and she locks it behind her, and she's trying to run downstairs, only she runs into Ghostface from another direction.
Yeah.
She locks herself in a room, but she realizes she has nowhere to go. And so she decides to jump out of a window, and she lands on a boat to break her fall, which I didn't.
How convenient.
Yeah, how convenient. And I'm also like, wouldn't that hurt you just as bad landing? Like, on the floor? I don't know. So she looks up, and she sees in the window that Ghostface is gone. And then she looks up at the garage, and this is when she covers her mouth and she lets out a scream because she discovers her friend Tatum has died.
Oh, yeah. That had to be very traumatizing for her.
Yeah. So in the living room, Randy is still watching the movie Halloween, and at this point, he's all by himself. And he seems a little drunk maybe at this point, and he's screaming at the character Laurie, again played by Jamie Lee Curtis. He's telling her, watch out for the killer. And all the while, Ghostface is behind him. And he should actually be watching out for himself. He's looking out for Laurie, but behind him, again, Ghostface is there. Yeah. Keeps telling her, look behind. And then we see Ghostface raise his blade, and the scene cuts back to Sid on the run. So she gets out to the front yard. She goes to the news van. Kenny lets her in, and he's like, look, we have a camera in the house. And on the feed, we see Randy's previous scene playing where he's yelling at, to look behind. And Kenny opens the van, and he's going to go help, but then he sees Ghostface standing in the doorway.
Oh, shit.
And he turns back. Yeah, oh, snaps. He turns back, and he's like, tells Sydney, oh, snaps. Yeah, we're on a 30-second delay. Mm-hmm. And when he turns around to leave again, bam, Ghostface slashes his neck. Yeah. The 30-second delay did you no favors, man.
No, it didn't. Yeah. And he got him good.
Yeah, you didn't see that. I was another I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
So Ghostface stabs Sid in her shoulder, and she slams the news van shut. And she manages to get out of the back of the double doors, and she's like she shimmies her way out of some equipment. Like, it's a weird setup they have. Like, it's like very utilitarian. I don't think I'm using that word right. They have all their equipment in there, and she gets out, and Ghostface, I don't know, at this point he's so funny because he's like slamming his hands on the bottom of the van door, and he's like running, and again we're kind of seeing he's kind of clumsy, Yeah,
he's really unhinged too.
yeah, that's a good word. He's unhinged, definitely. So Sydney goes running off into a wooded area because, again, this house is like in the middle of nowhere. And Gail and Dewey are now back, and he tells Gail to go to her news van, and he's like, hey, call the sheriff for backup because, again, they found the dad's car, and at that point, the dad is still a suspect. Dewey enters the house, and he's got his gun drawn, and we're hearing the screams of Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laurie Strode. Again, we hear him coming from the television screen because the movie Halloween is still playing in the background. And Dewey's going through the room, and again, he kind of doesn't, he's not as confident, you know, but he's going through the room and he's calling out for Mr. Prescott. And now we're back at the van with Gail, and she's telling Kedney, hey, I need the cellular. And this is when she realizes that she's standing in blood, and it's all on her shoes, and she's not wearing boots though. She's wearing heels.
Yeah.
Just a side note.
And her little, she's wearing like pumps, right?
Yeah, like
with her suit.
Yeah, I think she's in all red too, isn't she? If I remember correctly.
I think so. I think you're right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. That's what we're here for. We're here to talk about it. So she's starting to dial 911, and that's when Randy gives us a jump scare and he shouts, "What's going on?" And he appears at the window of the driver's seat where Gail is sitting, and she screams and she smacks him with the cell phone, and it's like one of those brick cell phones, guys. Okay, it's not like our our little smartphones we have now. This is like Zach Morris Saved by the Bell era, like those big chunky cell phones. She like whacks him with it.
Yeah, she gets him good.
Yeah, and she she starts the van, and she sees that there's stuff on the van, on the windows, so she's trying to turn on the windshield wipers, and we realize it's blood, and then Kenny's body just like lands on, like it's like it slides down from the top of the van onto the windshield.
Dude, that's wild.
Yeah, and she's like, ah, and she drives off, and she's still being her bitchy self, yelling at Kenny. She's like, get out of the fucking windshield.
Like, even in death, she couldn't be nice to Kenny. Not even once.
Yeah, she wasn't like, oh my God, poor Kenny. She's like, get off of the windshield.
Oh, so Gail.
I know, it's so funny. So she's driving, and then who emerges? Sid's yelling, stop. And she swerves so she doesn't hit her, and she crashes into the woods. It's like, oh my gosh.
What a mess.
A lot of hijinks at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't get this. So then Sydney just goes running back to the house, and she's calling for Dewey, and Dewey stumbles out of the front door, and he's bleeding, and he's like, Sid, and he's got a knife in his back, and Ghostface again appears behind him, and he grabs the knife from Stewie's back, and Sydney jumps into Dewey's patrol vehicle, and it's because it's parked right in front of the house, and she can't find the keys. She's looking for them, and that's when Ghostface shows her. He's like, hey, look what I got, and he's like waving the keys at her, and he disappears from her sight, and they keep playing like this game of like whack-a-mole, cat and mouse, trying to lock the doors, and he's unlocking them, and she even grabs the radio, and she's like trying to let the police know to come to Stu's house, because she's like, come to Stu Macher's, there's a killer. And Ghostface gets into the vehicle, and he almost gets Sid, but she manages to escape because Sid is awesome like that. Mm-hmm. She goes in, she runs up the stairs to the front porch, and she's grabbing at this point, she grabs Dewey's handgun from him, and Randy emerges, and he's limping, and he's begging for help. He reminds me of the character, I don't know if you've ever seen Creepshow 2.
Oh my God.
The guy, thanks for the ride lady, that just keeps like, thanks for the ride lady. Oh my God, I gotta cover that one. Thanks for the ride lady. Like, that's so
funny.
Poor Randy just keeps getting beat up and showing up
That's
again.
a good reference.
I didn't even think about that till like right now. I'm like, oh my God, it's a thanks for the ride lady. If you have not seen George Romero's Creepshow 2, it's terrible, as in terrible but good.
Yes, it's very cheesy, very campy.
Yeah, that is I
so
wonder
good.
If there was, now I get the vibe. I'm like, was that
maybe
a little bit of inspiration?
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Yeah. So here comes poor Randy. He's limping and he's begging for help, but Stu emerges at the same time, and they're both like, Sydney, help me, and we gotta get inside, and there's a killer. And she's kind of looking at them, and they're both pleading for help, and they're both saying, he's the killer, it's not me. And they're pointing fingers at each other, and she's like, not sure who to believe, and she's like, fuck you both. And she she gets in the house and slams the door on them, and she's crying, and another person emerges. Now it's Billy.
This fucker, man.
Billy's alive.
He don't quit.
Yeah.
Dang,
they're all the thanks for the ride lady guy, apparently.
Yeah, really. All of them at this point.
Yeah. So he's like bleeding, and he's crying for help, and he stumbles down the stairs, And he's like, Sid, give me the gun. And she says, no, he's out there. And he tells her, it's okay, give me the gun. And he opens the door to let Randy in. And you're like, oh, okay. And Randy says, Stu's flipped out, he's gone mad. And Billy says to him, we all go a little mad sometimes. And he shoots Randy in the shoulder. And we all go a little mad sometimes. That's a line from Norman Bates' character in 1960 movie Psycho.
So good.
Yeah. But then Billy licks one of his bloody fingers and he says, corn syrup. This is the same stuff they used for pig's blood in Carrie, referring to the infamous scene in the movie Carrie from 1976. This is when Sid realizes Billy is the killer. And she turns to run away from him, but instead she runs into the chest of Stu. And she says to him, please, I need help. And he looks down at her and he's holding a device that changes voices. And he talks into it and he says, surprise, Sydney. And it's the same voice from our caller that we've been getting.
Ooh, creepy.
Oh, yeah. I don't recall if I don't remember how I felt at that moment, but it's still like, oh, dang. So there's 2 killers and that's why he's in so many I've heard a podcast, one of them where they literally try to figure out who did which killing in what scene.
Yeah.
I don't have the brain power for that, but yeah, it's crazy that turns out there's 2 of them.
Right.
So she's trapped between the 2 of them, and Stu throws the device to Billy, asking her, what's the matter, Sydney? You look like you've seen a ghost. And she asks them why. And Stu says, hey, it's all a part of the game. And Billy says the game is called Guess Who's Going to Die. And she yells, fuck you. And she says, no. And he says, no. You already played that game, remember? And Stu says, oh. And he does that funny, I wish I could capture Matthew Lillard's oh. He does this little
so funny
where covers his mouth and he does his funny things with his eyes, and he does it throughout the movie, right?
He's very physically a physical comedian.
Yeah.
So good.
And so there's, Stu hands him a knife, and Stu says this game is fun. He says, we're going to ask you a question, and if you get it wrong, and if you get it right, Billy says, you die. So really fun game. She says they're both crazy. And Stu says, we prefer the term psychotic. And she tells him you won't get away with it. And Billy tells her, well, tell that to Cotton Weary.
Ooh. These 2 are sick.
Yeah, so we find out they not only are the current killers, but they're the ones who framed Cotton Weary as well for the murder of her mom.
Ugh, terrible.
Yeah. So again, Stu, aka Matthew Lillard's character, with his voice, he says mockingly, hey, watch a few movies, take a few notes. It was fun. She asks why they killed her mother, and Billy mocks her to Stu, saying she wants a motive. And he says motives don't matter, and makes more movie references, saying, they never decided why Hannibal Lecter liked eating people, and that Norman Bates didn't have a motive, but I think he did. But anyway, he tells her it's a lot scarier when there's no motive, and he calls her mother a slut, and says she flashed her shit all over town like she was Sharon Stone or something. And Stu says, yeah, so we put her out of her misery because, let's face it, Sydney, your mother was no Sharon Stone. He does this funny thing with his hand and and I know it's not meant to be funny, but that part gets me every time. He's like, no Sharon Stone. And my niece oh my god, my niece Kelsey does it so good. That's one of her favorite lines he's go around quoting.
He's just so wild with his antics, Yeah. So hilarious, but I know it's not meant to be. But
it's not meant to be. But as somebody, if you watch it enough times, you just find humor in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm sure that was done on purpose.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So at this point, Billy reveals that Sydney's mom was sleeping with his dad, and that's why her mother left their family.
Oh.
And Sid's face is shocked by this, and I don't know. Every time I watch this scene, I always wonder, because when he says his motive, Stu's character even looks kind of shocked.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he was genuine, if they told the actor to play it that way, as in maybe Stu's character never knew the real reason that they killed the mother, or not, or was that like ambiguous for us? I don't know. On purpose.
Well,
I don't know.
I've read some things on Reddit. You know, that's my news source.
Oh yeah.
That Stu was always the follower and Billy was a leader, and he just was, whatever you tell me to do, I will do.
Yeah.
And without really asking questions. And I think he primarily was Ghostface because he's like very clumsy and stuff, while Billy was doing the calls.
Maybe.
That's my theory. I could be wrong. I usually am. But I do think the first part where Stu just did whatever he said because Billy's the ringleader, I could see that.
Yeah, because I always wondered, did Stu know that was the real motive? And I guess we'd have to ask the writer, Kevin Williamson, and the director and whatnot. I don't even know if they've ever answered that. They probably don't, because they probably didn't care. But I feel like they asked that they used that scene just for that reason, so we could have these kind of conversations. Like,
absolutely.
Did Stu know the real motive of killing Maureen Prescott? Or did he finally, meaning, was this the first time he heard this motive, or did he always know? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
A lot of speculation. Exactly. With this whole little motive here.
Yeah, and I didn't catch that on my first viewing. I caught those in later viewings. I'm like, wow, he kind of has like a shocked look on his face. Of course, Sid is shocked by all of this, and they even ask her, so do you think that's a good enough motive? And Billy even digs at Sid, telling her, you had some serious abandonment issues, and it could have caused some serious deviant behavior, causing you to have sex with a psychopath. And Stu makes fun of her for giving it up and not being a virgin. It says that now you gotta die. Those are the rules. Ew. And Stu then says he has a surprise for Sydney, and he leaves the room again saying, I'll be right back. It's gonna be a scream. Even as they're like tormenting this chick, they're like, he's being a comedian. It's just his character throughout.
Yeah.
Stu comes back to the room, and he has none other than Sydney's dad. He's tied up. Yeah.
Didn't go good.
Yeah, so really what we know for sure, it definitely wasn't the dad. Yeah. Dad is tied up. He's got duct tape on his mouth, and Stu puts the little voice recording changing device. He puts it into his pocket, and he puts the cellular phone. He's like, we won't be needing these anymore.
So wild.
I know. He's like, I just love his voice. We won't be needing these anymore.
Yeah.
So Stu and Billy explain how they're going to pin all of this on her dad, saying that, people are going to believe it because they're going to say your dad went crazy because it's the anniversary of the death of his wife, and he just went on a murdering spree. He even tells Sid, and that they have all the evidence to prove it. He even tells Sid that they're going to be the only two survivors. And this is when it starts to get like even more dark. So Billy then, Stu gets himself ready, and he's like, all right, let's do this. And Billy, he stabs Stu in the stomach. And Stu says, good one, my turn. And then he stabs Billy. And, before he had done that, Billy's like, hey, remember, don't go too deep and stay to the side. And Stu says, okay.
Sure, boss.
Yeah, so they've taken turns stabbing each other, and I think Stu's getting stabbed more, though, unfortunately.
Oh yeah.
And while this is going on, Sid is just watching them, like, disgusted, and her dad is still laying on the floor tied up, and Stu is crying out in glee that they're gonna be the only survivors because let's face it, baby, these days you gotta have a sequel, and they want to be the sequel. Spoiler alert: there are, of course, plenty of sequels to this franchise, to this movie.
Yeah.
She tells them, hey, you guys are sick fucks and you've seen too many movies. Billy yells at her, now Sid, don't you blame the movies. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
Yes.
And he keeps stabbing Stu, and he begs him to stop telling him. And he says, I'm feeling a little woozy here. And he tells Stu to go get the gun, and realizes at this point that the gun is missing.
I mean, dude is bleeding out of his dang mouth. Like, where did he stab him at? Holy hell.
Well, yeah, like I said, he took way too many stabs.
Yeah.
I feel like Billy was being more stabby than Stu.
Billy is definitely more aggressive.
Yeah.
Gail enters the kitchen, gun in hand. Billy asks Stu, I thought she was dead. And he responds, she looked dead to me, and she still does. I'm like, oh. She tells them she has her own ending to all of this. The reporter left for dead comes to and stumbles on them, finds the gun, foils their plan, and saves the day. Dun, 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 dun. She pulls the trigger and nothing happens. Billy kicks her and grabs the gun from her and reminds her the gun works better without the safety one. Oopsie poopsie.
True.
Billy is about to shoot her, saying, "This is Gail Weathers signing off." This is when they realize that Sydney is missing. They can't find her anywhere, and the phone rings. And I was like, yes. Billy answers it to a voice asking, "Are you alone in the house?" To which Billy responds to Sid, calling her a bitch, and she tells him, "Not so fast. We're gonna play a little game. It's called Guess Who Just Called the Police and Reported Your Sorry Motherfucking Ass," cutting to her real voice for those final jobs. Billy is mad and yells at Stu to find her. He says he can't, and he's still bleeding. Like, he was cut to shreds inside. He's bleeding out of his mouth. He's out of his chest, his stomach, everywhere. Like, he's bleeding out. He's dying, okay?
Yeah, he's, like, leaning over, like,
Yeah, he's not doing too well.
Yeah.
Billy hands Stu the phone, and he leaves. Stu says, "Hello," into the phone and asks, she asks Stu, what's his motive? He says, "Peer pressure. I'm far too sensitive." And that's why I think, like, Billy was always the leader.
Yeah.
You know, he's dying. He's not thinking clearly. He's lost a lot of blood, so the truth is coming out, right?
Yeah.
Billy comes back yelling at Sid on the phone that he's going to rip her up like her mother. And she makes fun of him by telling him, "Well, you gotta find me first, you pansy-assed mama's boy."
Yes.
He yells, "Fuck!" and hits Stu with the phone, to which Stu says, "Oh, you hit me with the phone, you dick." I love that part too.
He improvised that.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard he ad-libbed a lot of these lines, like the part where he's like, "I'm dying here."
Billy goes on a tirade, tearing up the living room looking for Sydney. Stu gets back on the phone and asks her if she really called the police. And she says, "You bet your sorry ass I did." And cries, "My mom and dad are going to be so mad at me."
Oh my gosh.
All the while, the Halloween movie is still playing, you know, the scenes of Laurie, and she's hiding in the closet from Michael Myers, and we hear her screaming, and a ghost face emerges from the door, stabbing Billy with an umbrella. And I love that. She's just like, rah.
Yeah.
Ghostface takes off the costume, and we see it's Sydney. Stu comes chasing after Sid and pins her down, yelling that, you know, "I always had a thing for you, Sid." She bites him and hits him in the head with a large clay pot, then tells him, "Only in your dreams," and throws a large tube TV on him, and he screams as he's fried to death. So, I mean, he was already dying. Might as well finish it. No biggie.
Yeah. And I love it's those old school big, like, box with the big tubes in them. Yeah, huge. So it makes sense that this TV could totally take him out.
She stoops down to grab the ghost face mask and gets startled by an arm grabbing her. It's Randy. She says, "I thought you were dead," to which he responds, "I probably should be. I've never been so happy to be a virgin."
Thanks for the ride, lady. No,
Right. Billy then jumps up and grabs Sydney, choking her and telling her to say hello to your mother. She jabs her finger into an open wound. Ow, but he deserves it. He's screaming and raises a knife in the air, about to stab her. Then he is shot by none other than Miss Gail Weathers. He's coughing up blood, and now he's dead. Gail remarks that she remembered the safety this time, you bastard. I love that part.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
The three of them are standing over Billy's body. Sid kicks him. Randy tells her carefully, this is the moment when the supposed dead killer comes back to life for one last time. And Billy indeed yells out, and Sid shoots him, saying, "Not in my movie." Like right in the forehead, too.
Yeah.
We hear a crash, and they scream, but it's just her dad stumbling into the room.
Whoa, there's a lot going on there. It is now sunrise, and we see that Dewey has survived. He's being placed in an ambulance and on a stretcher. Gail is still in the clothes from the night before. She's got blood on her face, and she gets right back into character, right back into action. And she begins to report on what's happened, explaining the mystery of mass killings being solved, and that it was like the plot of some scary movie. In between, she's mentioning how this is her big shot. And we get the end credits.
So good. I love this ending.
Yeah, it is. It's wild.
So amazing.
Yeah, I love all the redemption arcs of the different characters, right? Like Sydney was like scared at the beginning, like even the way they have her dressing in the first scene with her little like nighties in her little ponytail, and then she gets tough by the end and she's talking shit to the guys, and Gail with the gun, like realizing how to act like this time that she's gonna actually get them.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. Did you think that the comedy did it go well, or did it detract from it at all?
No, I think it flowed nicely.
Yeah.
I really like that there were some comedic moments. As we said before, Matthew Lillard, his comedic timing is so good. Also Jamie Kennedy, like, he's so lovable. David Arquette, so lovable. So you have like these goofy characters. Then you have the more serious characters like Billy and Sydney and Gail. And then, Tatum's kind of in the middle. Rose McGowan's character is like a little goofy, a little serious. She takes no shit. So I think it's like a good, even balance. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the same. I think that's part of what made this movie so successful, that you could watch it. And personally, I think aside from the opening scene, the rest of it is not as scary. And so I think the comedic elements helped that. It was a good homage to like horror comedies, but it wasn't just straight horror, just straight comedy. It had some good scares in it, some good whodunit moments. I don't think it detracted from it at all. I thought it was genius, and that's part of what has made this movie like such a cult classic. I don't even know if you could call it a cult classic, because it was a classic from the beginning, right? I mean, usually cult classics get bigger later. I mean, it was so successful from the jump.
Yeah, I agree. I really love the balance. It's not like when we watched Once Bitten, where it was total clown shoes. I think there was a lot of like psychological anticipation too. And it really made you think. Like we said before, I would flip-flop a lot. Like, oh, do I know? Do I not know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't remember how surprised I was or wasn't. I think at this point you become very invested in Sydney, that when you do get the reveal, you're just like, oh, I just kind of just went with it. I thought she did really good as a final girl. I know Jamie Lee Curtis that's probably who they originally coined with that, but she kind of broke Randy's rules, right? She did lose her virginity. So I love how they do that. Like, they give you these rules, and Randy's grateful that he was a virgin and lives, but then it's like, well, Sydney lived and she was the final girl, but she wasn't a virgin either. So they kind of flipped it on you a little bit with that.
Yeah, I really like that too. I love how there's a lot of Easter eggs, paying callbacks to iconic movies. And now this has become an iconic movie. I feel like this is probably one of the best horror movies of the 90s.
Yeah, it's on my top 5 of horror movies of all time.
Oh, definitely.
It's not as hardcore, it's not as gory, and it's amazing. There's like no nudity, and the gore is pretty minimal. Again, only the opening scene is super gory. Beyond that, it's amazing that what they did with it, and I think it's gonna do well throughout time. I mean, other than like technology, you can't avoid that. Technology is never going to age well. I definitely can see people watching this. And it's interesting though, because I have asked a few younger people, like in their 20s, like some of them pick up on the comedy the whole time. They're just like, oh, that movie's kind of silly. Like, it's funny. I hadn't caught on to the Ghostface, like his antics. Yeah. Until with rewatches it, and you just see even sillier of that. Yeah, there's just like these like 2 teenage guys trying to get away with murder.
Yeah, definitely. I really do think that the suspense element is really good, though.
Yeah.
It's very suspenseful. The perfect amount of jump scares. The plot, I think the plot's not too bad.
Yeah, I think it moves along pretty well.
Yeah. I'm never bored.
No, that's what I mean by moves along well. There's not a part where you're like, I don't think there was really anything they could have left out. I think everything pretty much served a purpose. Everything moved the story along. All of the actors were entertaining, and I love it. Like, I overall like the whole franchise except for the one where none of the original people are in it. I think that one, they didn't have any comedy in it. I don't want to, but the rest of them I like. I think, is that one 6? Yeah, the most recent one.
Oh, okay. I think I stopped at like 4.
Yeah, I think it might, was it 5 or 6? I don't remember. I'm gonna be yelling at myself. Well, they throw me off because like one of them, they don't even change the name. They still just call it Scream, but it's like Scream 5 technically or something.
Oh, okay.
But we'll see what happens because there's gonna be another one coming out, and supposedly they're bringing back all the characters somehow. Like Stu's gonna be back and Billy's gonna be back, and I'm like, how are they? This is gonna be like a soap opera, but I'm here for it. I'll be happy. Nev Cal's coming back.
Didn't they also try to make this a TV show on MTV? Do I remember that?
There is a show, I've never watched that show. I don't know. Now I think, now that I think about it, the logo looks the same. What is that one? I don't even know what that's
Yes.
I couldn't talk about it because I've never watched it.
Yes, there's 3 seasons.
Oh, wow. I know
just looked it
MTV
up.
did that, and they did like a Teen Wolf, and it's funny because I'll talk about the movie Teen Wolf with younger people, and they're like, oh, the TV show? And I'm like, no, the movie. The great, again, very loosely horror comedy, more comedy, but with Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox. I love Michael J. Fox so much.
I know.
So good. Yeah, I really love this movie. I'm so glad we did it. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. Thank you. I really hope you guys enjoyed this different style of covering movies, and probably try to do some more again like this in the future. But thank you again, Kristen, and to all the listeners. If you want to find me on social media, on Instagram, I'm at Dreadful Dialogue Podcast. I also have a website, dreadfuldialogue.com. And if you want to email me, I've been getting people reaching out to me on Instagram. I love hearing from listeners. You can also email me, Alyse at dreadfuldialogue.com.